The age of drones is over, and we'll tell you why. The Tau Empire. These are considered by many the new kids on the block in 40k. They were introduced as a brand new alien race in 3rd edition. They're blue-skinned, often referred to as fish people, who live in a remote part of the galaxy. They've been greatly inspired visually by anime and sort of Eastern designs. When you look at their models, it's pretty clear, and they really like to use a lot of like battle suits, mechs, that kind of thing. In the universe of Warhammer 40,000, they are a fairly unique race. They're very psychically void and null, so they don't ever use psychers. They're one of the few races that relies upon diplomacy. They like to go out into the galaxy and make peace and friendship with everyone. They live by the tenet of the greater good. This is that, obviously, everything they do is for the greater good of their species and the galaxy. They are often considered to be the good guys, or the only good race of Warhammer 40,000, but there is a dark secret hiding within their greater good facade. They are ruled over by the ethereal caste, and there are many rumors that they use forms of mind control and propaganda to control the other races and even their own people to get them to follow along. But for all that, they're probably the least horrible people out there, and if you had to live somewhere in Warhammer 40,000, probably want to live in a Tau world. In the new book, we've got a number of changes that are going on within it. Some units got better, some units got worse, obviously. I want to take a look at a surprising standout unit from this book, and that's the Sky Ray gunship. Probably rolling your eyes at me right now if you know Tau at all, because the Sky Ray is notorious for being probably the most useless and worst unit in the Tau Codex, aside from maybe Vespers. For those of you who don't know, this is an anti-aircraft tank, a version of the Devilfish that carries seeker missiles. The problem in the past has been that these are limited use and not particularly good weapons. Now, however, the Sky Ray has been upgraded to simply have you can have just normal smart missile systems, and then it's got an array of seeker missiles that do D3 plus 1 shots, each shot doing 2d3 damage at a high strength and a high AP, AP9 or AP3 and strength 9. So this is a powerful weapon that just works all the time, making it so vastly improved on its utter uselessness of before. It also comes with marker lights, it can take smart missile systems, and it's relatively cheap. It gets free rerolls to hit, and is absolutely amazing at killing actual aircraft. It gets +2 to hit, and gets to reroll damage against them. So this has gone from a ship that had very limited amounts of firepower that it could actually run out of during the game, to one that throws out a lot of damage. And if you're looking at kind of a surprise sleeper hit in this book, I'd probably take a look at the Sky Ray, because I think there's a lot of potential there. So when we look at like combos and abilities in this book, I think one that really stood out for me is the Farsight Enclave's unique warlord trait, Master of the Killing Blow. So this has a couple of abilities. The first one is anytime the guy makes an attack, and it says attack, so this can be close combat or ranged attack. If you roll a 6 to wound, you get a automatically -3 to your armor penetration. That's okay, but it is useful. The more important thing is that anytime you're doing wounds, the enemy can't use any ability to negate these wounds. Now, I don't think this applies to like your armor save, because that's a different thing, but it does apply to things like Ghazghkull's ability to only take a certain number of wounds every turn. Same thing with Satan. And this should also apply to things like Feel No Pain or Disgustingly Resilient. So this is pretty much the one thing I've seen in the game that just gets right through those abilities like that. You could put this on one of your battlesuit commanders, and they're going to be a really powerful either shooting or at combat at wrecking any of those things and units that have some sort of special ability to ignore wounds or can get out of things. So I think that's something to really look out for that could throw off some powerful defensive abilities. And if we're looking forward, if we get more abilities like this could get even better in the future. This book does have a lot of changes from the previous edition. Not all of them are going to be ones that you like if you're a Tau player, but there are a bunch of changes. I think the first and most obvious change you'll notice when you look at the book is there is no greater good. That entire rule is just gone. You don't get anything for Overwatch. You don't get to pile in Overwatch shots or get any kind of special Overwatch ability. That's just gone. In its place, they've moved the Montauk and Kalyang. I'm probably mispronouncing these made-up names, but I don't play Tau, so they've moved that into an army-wide ability that affects you variously throughout the entire game. Some of the other major changes are how they have changed marker lights. This is, again, a really core part of the Tau Empire's rules, and it's been something that's changed basically every edition. Has never made anybody happy. The way that marker lights work now is your unit during the movement phase is going to take an action to fire marker lights if you have marker lights in it. This basically means that you don't get to move if you're doing marker lights, but that's all you're sacrificing. In addition, vehicle and drone units can marker light and still move, so there's basically no reason for them not to do it unless they were trying to do some other action. Once the marker light action has been completed, you're going to target an enemy unit that you could normally shoot at, and then roll a number of dice equal to the number of marker lights that you have in your unit. And basically, for each 3+, they get a marker light token on them. Then when you're shooting at them, you just get +1 to hit if they have a marker light, and after your unit shot them, you pull one of those tokens off. So it's very basic. It's just going to give you +1 to hit now, but it does take actions to use. The other major change people are going to notice in this book, which I alluded to earlier, is how they've changed drones. So we all have been annoyed with Tau drone span, right? Shield drones flying everywhere taking hits. And you probably have seen that shield drones got an extra wound, making you even more annoyed about what they're going to do. Here's the big thing in the book. Savior protocols is basically gone. Tau drones don't have any ability outside of a one-use stratagem that can affect one shot per turn or phase to take hits for other things. The gun drone, if it's in your shield drone, if it's in your unit, sure, you can still allocate wounds to it, but units of shield drones cannot jump in front of other units anymore. That's gone. A unit of entire shield drones is just a bunch of guys who don't have guns and can't really do anything. They're still hard to kill, they can still be kind of annoying, but that's it. Also, if you were ever annoyed facing Tau and they had a bajillion little drones popping off of vehicles and stuff, that doesn't exist anymore. If a drone is part of a vehicle, it's just permanently basically attached to that vehicle. Its guns are just part of the vehicle's guns. It can't come off. It can't do anything. If the vehicle's destroyed, it's destroyed too. So everything you knew about drones is gone now. The drone army is dead. Thank God. Tau are going to be an interesting place in the meta. Overall, I don't think this is one of the strongest books in the game. It's mostly very much refocused Tau just to be in a shooting army. In fact, they lost, as we talked about, losing the greater good. They've lost most of their abilities to weirdly interact with like Overwatch or Charge phase. They didn't get any big combat boosts. They didn't get anything like that. They're just going to be a big shooting army. And I think that they're going to end up being a very mid-tier army, honestly. They've got some tricks. They've got some very powerful shooting. Some of it did get boosted. You've probably seen that, the railgun on the Hammerhead is incredibly powerful. It is just the railgun on the Hammerhead, not other railguns. The broadside railgun didn't get buffed like that. Even the railgun on the terrain piece didn't get buffed like that. So it's not crazy. Don't worry about it. They are still a fairly cheap army. Most of their models are pretty cheap, though their infantry does seem to be a little expensive to me. And I think overall, they're still just a very shooty army. They didn't get any real close combat abilities, and I think in modern, aggressive Warhammer 40,000, they're not going to fare very well when you get up in their face and start chopping them up. They've also lost their huge defensive buffs that made them annoying to kill in drones. So I think in some ways, this is a poor Tau book. It's got some really interesting ideas, but I think meta-wise, I don't think that they're going to be something to really worry about if you have ways of dealing with shooting already. I think, this is a great army for beating up things like Imperial Guard, unfortunately, because they shoot better than Guard. They might be a fairly decent counter to Space Marines. They do have a good number of D2 shooting, which is really bad for Marine stuff. On the other hand, I think armies like Drukhari, Dark Eldar are fast enough. They're going to get up there and they have that damage output. And with Tau losing some of their resilience, they're just going to get messed up by these elite armies still. Even units like Custodes still might give them trouble because Tau still can struggle with dealing with a lot of the heavier things. This book is pretty different from the past. Now, they didn't really get any new units. They didn't get any new models, really, aside from a few characters that got updated. And it's not necessarily that there's a crazy change. There's things are still doing what they did before. Some things did get better, and I think there's a couple real big changes that are going to shake up the army for you with no feel, no pain, no greater good, and the changes to drones, which is going to make any Tau player going to have to rethink your entire army. Interestingly, I also think this is an army that somewhat points at what we might see from a future edition, maybe 10th edition. There's a lot of things in this book that use actions to activate actual abilities, and this is something I haven't seen as much, especially in older books from this edition. I already talked about how marker lights is this action you're taking during the game a lot. Also, when infantry are using their support turrets, in order to deploy their support turrets and use them, you have to take an action to deploy the support turrets. So you have a lot more of fiddly things where you've got these units moving around and doing actions that aren't related to objectives, but are related to activating their rules. And that's something we're starting to see a little bit more in the newer books, but is still probably the most heavily used in this Tau book, where you're gonna see, dozens of enemy units potentially every turn doing different actions to activate marker lights or turrets or objectives and things like that. And that's a pretty in-depth change from the earlier parts of this edition, where actions were only really used on a few mission things. So I think if we're looking forward in where the game is going, this is a very interesting book and kind of points towards their design team wanting to better utilize the idea of actions and what that means to the game. And possibly in a new edition of the game at some point, we could see them double down and make actions much more important. This feels, and maybe in some ways, that they've been taking ideas from Kill Team and some of their other smaller games and trying to work them into the future of Warhammer 40,000. If you like that, check out one of our other videos here. I'm Abe from Bowls. Thanks for watching. One of our other videos here. I'm Abe from Bowls. Balls? I'm Matt with balls on the internet. I'm Matt's balls on the internet.